Mina Kepler was not having a good day. Not that it mattered. When the universe hands you lemons, you don't get lemonade. You get a sour taste in your mouth and a vague desire to punch someone. In this case, the someone was Corbin Elton, who was currently hunched over a holographic display, pulling at his hair like it owed him money. "Tell me again why we're in a virtual version of Earth when the real one's gone to hell in a handbasket," Mina asked, crossing her arms and tapping her foot like a metronome set to a Noid. Corbin looked up, his eyes bright with that peculiar blend of genius and insanity. "Because, dear Mina, it's the only place left where folks like us can pretend we still have a say in things. And well, it's not like we're spoiled for choice. The digital recreation of Earth was a marvel of technology, assuming your idea of a marvel included a world where everything smelled slightly of burnt toast, and the sky had a permanent gray tint, like an old television set on the fritz. Mina found it comforting in the way one finds comfort in an old pair of shoes, worn out but familiar. All right, genius. What do we know about these Viathans, apart from the fact that they are about as welcome as a fox in a henhouse?" Mina leaned over the console, squinting at the swirling data points that looked suspiciously like someone had spilled digital spaghetti. Corbin sighed, rubbing his temples. "Advanced aliens, big brains, and surprise, surprise, they've taken a liking to our little virtual Eden here. We think they've found a way to slip through the firewall, like a digital poltergeist." "Lovely," Mina muttered, her voice dripping with sarcasm thick enough to drown in. "Invading our last sanctuary because their own neighborhood probably wasn't dystopian enough." Corbin chuckled, though it was a laugh born more of desperation than humor. "Yeah, it's a bit like moving into a condemned building because you heard it has a nice view," Mina snorted. "And the view is just a brick wall. They were the last bastion of leadership, if you could call it that. A ragtag bunch of survivors, tech wizards, and what was left of the military strategists, all plugging away in a virtual sandbox while the real world went up in flames. It was a bit like managing a theme park while the roller coasters were on fire. So, how do we stop these Viathans from treating our digital Earth like their personal playground?" Mina asked, her patience wearing thin as a cheap rug. Corbin tapped a few keys, and the display shifted to show a complex web of connections. "We fight fire with fire, or, in this case, code with code. We need to outsmart them, hack their systems, shut them down from the inside. Sounds easy, like threading a needle in the dark while riding a mechanical bull," Mina remarked dryly. "Exactly," Corbin responded, though his grin suggested he thrived on such impossible tasks. "But if anyone can pull it off, it's us. Or more accurately, me with you barking orders." Mina rolled her eyes, but there was a flicker of camaraderie in her expression. "All right, Einstein, let's see what you've got." The hardest part about fighting an alien invasion in a virtual world was that it felt like a video game with two real consequences. No respirators if you ran out of lives, no credits to insert for a continue. Just the cold, hard reality that one wrong move could erase the last digital bastion of humanity. "We need to gather the team," Corbin decided, snapping out of his thoughts. "This isn't a one-man show. Of course not. One-man shows are for narcissists and folks who think they are God's gift to entertainment." Mina smirked. "But where do we start?" Corbin gestured to the sprawling cityscape that floated behind them, a digital reconstruction of New York, complete with its own version of Times Square, where the ads were still bright and obnoxious. "We put out the call. Get the brains and brawn together. Summoning the Avengers, are we?" Mina teased, but there was a seriousness beneath her words. "If only," Corbin replied with a wistful sigh. "But we'll have to make do with what we've got. A ragged mix of nerds, soldiers, and anyone not currently losing their marbles." A few keystrokes later, and a broadcast signal swept through their digital world, a call to arms that rippled out like a stone in a pond. It was a call that said, "Join us if you're not too busy dying." As they waited for replies, Mina leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. "You ever think about what we're doing here, Corbin? playing God in a sandbox while the real world crumbles. Corbin shrugged, the weight of the universe sitting snugly on his shoulders. All the time. But hey, if we manage to save the world, maybe we'll get a statue or something. Must be a small statue, Miana replied, chuckling despite herself. Replies started trickling in, each more sarcastic than the last. Typical humans, facing the end with a wisecrack and a middle finger raised high. Looks like we've got our team, Corbin announced, scanning through the responses. Including our favorite cynic, Captain Jax, Miana groaned. Jax, that guy's got a death wish wrapped in a bravado sandwich. Exactly. Makes him perfect for this suicide mission, Corbin quipped. With their motley crew assembled, it was time to strategize. Miana waved her hand and a three-dimensional map of the virtual city sprung to life, spinning lazily in midair. All right, team, welcome to Earth's last stand. Try not to screw it up. Captain Jax's avatar flickered into view, a hulking figure in digital camo, the kind of guy who looked like he'd wrestle a bear just to win a bet. Kepler, Elton, good to see your digital faces. Lovely what you've done with the place. Thanks, Jax, Miana replied with a tight smile. We've got Viathans on our doorstep, and not the kind that bring cookies. Cookies or no, let's kick 'em back to wherever they crawled out from, Jax said, cracking his knuckles with enthusiasm. The plan was simple, which meant it would probably fail spectacularly. Corbin highlighted sections of the map, each representing a potential entry point for the alien menace. We need to secure these locations and lock the Viathans out for good. Piece of cake, Jax said, grinning. Miana rolled her eyes. Wouldn't count on it. These aliens aren't exactly amateurs. Neither are we, Jax countered. The team split into groups, each tasked with securing a part of the digital city. Miana and Corbin stayed behind, coordinating efforts and trying not to think about how much was riding on this harebrained scheme. As the operation commenced, Miana found herself pacing a groove into the floor. Ever get the feeling we're just delaying the inevitable? Corbin shrugged. Life is inevitable. Everything else is just a delay. Dark humor was the only thing keeping them from losing it entirely. That and the adrenaline of a plan teetering on the brink of success or failure. Hours passed, the digital sun setting and rising, a reminder of time's relentless march. Reports flowed in, a mix of progress and setbacks, each one a step closer to saving what was left of humanity's home away from home. Finally, Captain Jax's voice crackled through the comms. All sectors secured, folks. Viathans are packing their bags, looking pretty miffed about it. Miana couldn't help but grin, the relief washing over her like a cold shower. Good work, team. Now let's keep it that way. Corbin leaned back, exhaustion etched into his features. Now comes the fun part, making sure they don't come back for an encore. Just as they started to relax, the screens around them flared to life, displaying a message that made both their hearts skip a beat. What the hell is that? Miana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Corbin's eyes widened, the color draining from his face. Looks like a message from the Viathans. They're not done with us yet. The message was brief, but its implications were clear. We know where you are, we're coming. Miana took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Well, looks like it's game on. Corbin nodded slowly, his mind already racing with new plans. Game on indeed. Let's show them just how tenacious humans can be. And with that, they prepared to face the next wave, knowing full well that the odds were stacked against them. But if there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was to fight like hell when backed into a corner. Corbin paced the room, the soles of his boots wearing a path into the faux marble floor of the command center as if it were a real place. The message from the Viathans loomed large on the display, flashing ominously like a neon sign in a rundown part of town. It was hard to ignore, and even harder to do anything about. Miana leaned against the console, arms crossed, watching Corbin with a bemused expression. You know, if you keep pacing like that, you'll trip an alarm and bring the whole thing down. He shot her a look, half irritation, half admiration. Just thinking. Well, don't think too hard. We still need you to not blow a fuse before the aliens can finish the job. The command center was a hub of frantic activity, much like a beehive on fire. Operators swarmed from station to station, fingers flying over keyboards like they could type their way out of the apocalypse. The digital representation of Earth's last survivors was gathered here, their avatars a motley assortment of armor, casual wear, and the occasional inexplicable pirate hat. No one seemed to know where they got those, but they weren't asking. "So, what's the plan, oh great leader?" Miana's voice was sharp enough to cut glass, but it was the kind of razor sarcasm that masked deeper concern. Corbin rubbed his chin, trying to channel his inner strategic genius and hoping it wasn't short-circuited by panic. "We need to unite the factions. If we're fighting each other while the Viathans are out there playing digital puppeteer, we're toast." "And not the nice, lightly buttered kind," Miana nodded. "Call a meeting then, get everyone on the same page or at least the same book." Corbin gave a tight smile. "Easier said than done. You know how these folks are. Herding cats would be a walk in the park." "Yeah, but cats don't usually come with lasers and a high tolerance for insubordination." He tapped a few keys, the display shifting to show a network of connections, each line representing one of the many human factions scattered throughout the virtual world. The irony of relying on a digital Earth to save their skins wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Corbin. Corbin activated the broadcast function, his voice booming out across the digital landscape. "Attention, everyone. As you've probably noticed, we're in a bit of a situation. The Viathans are poking around, and we need to rally together if we want to stop them from turning this place into their personal playground." Miana watched the display, a series of blips lighting up as responses trickled in, each more sarcastic than the last. Captain Jax's avatar was among them, predictably. "Rallying the troops, eh?" Jax's voice was a low rumble. "Good luck with that, Elton. Getting these folks to agree on anything is like pulling teeth from a shark." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Corbin replied dryly. "Just make sure your team's ready to back us up when things go south." Jax chuckled. "Aye, aye, Captain." With the message sent, all they could do was wait, and hope that the distinct aroma of burnt toast wasn't an omen for their impending demise. As the factions assembled, the command center took on the air of a particularly contentious family reunion, if said family included ex-military, hackers, and more conspiracy theorists than you could shake a tinfoil hat at. Miana took to the center of the room, her presence demanding attention despite, or perhaps because of, her diminutive stature. "All right, listen up. We've got Viathans knocking at our virtual front door, and unless you all fancy a one-way trip back to the Stone Age, we need to work together." An older man with grizzled features and a perpetual scowl spoke up, his voice gravelly with skepticism. "And why should we trust you, Kepler? Last I checked, you and Elton here weren't exactly the paragons of leadership." Miana sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Look, you can either follow our lead or try your luck out there on your own, but I'm willing to bet the Viathans are a little less forgiving than we are." The murmurs of discontent dwindled into reluctant acquiescence. It was hardly a rousing endorsement, but in times like these, they'd have to take what they could get. Corbin stepped up, addressing the gathered factions with a weary yet determined gaze. "We may not be perfect, but we're all that stands between humanity and extinction. So let's swallow our pride, put aside our differences, and maybe, just maybe, we'll come out of this alive." The room fell silent, the weight of their situation settling over them like a heavy cloak. Even the more cynical members of the assembly seemed to grasp the gravity of their predicament. "All right," someone finally spoke up, a tall woman with a soldier's bearing. "What do we need to do?" Corbin pointed to the map, highlighting the key areas they needed to defend. "These are our primary targets. The Viathans have been slipping through our defenses like they are on a Sunday stroll, so we need to shore up these locations and lock them out." "Sounds simple enough," Jax chimed in, his tone laced with irony. "Simplicity is a luxury we can't afford," Corbin replied. We need to be smarter, faster, and just plain better than them if we're going to have a chance. The factions nodded, a tentative alliance beginning to form. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As the meeting broke up, Miana sidled up to Corbin, her expression a mix of skepticism and reluctant hope. Well, that went about as well as could be expected. Corbin nodded, exhaustion etched into his features. Yeah, but at least we've got them on our side. For now, anyway. The digital Earth continued to revolve beneath them, a constant reminder of what was at stake. It was a world of their own making, but one they were determined to protect at all costs. The first sign that something was amiss came in the form of flickering lights, the digital landscape around them stuttering like a glitch in the Matrix. Miana exchanged a worried glance with Corbin, the implications dawning on them both. Viathan interference, she suggested, though her tone held little doubt. Looks like it, Corbin confirmed, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he brought up diagnostics. They're trying to destabilize the environment. If they can crash the whole system, we're done for. Miana cursed under her breath, a string of expletives that would have made a sailor blush. So, what do we do? Keep them distracted long enough for me to counter their attack, Corbin instructed, his focus unwavering, even as the world around them shimmered like a mirage. Miana nodded, her mind racing as she considered their options. All right, folks, she called out to the assembled factions. Looks like the Viathans are trying to pull the rug out from under us. Let's make sure it's not that easy. The room erupted into action, avatars moving with purpose as they prepared to defend their digital home. It was a strange sight, people fighting a war from behind computer screens, their avatars standing in for flesh and blood. Corbin worked feverishly, his mind a blur of code and calculations as he attempted to outmaneuver the alien invasion. It was a battle of wits, and one he couldn't afford to lose. Minutes stretched into hours, the tension palpable as the digital world continued to flicker and wane. Miana moved among the factions, coordinating efforts and issuing orders with the authority of someone who knew what needed to be done, even if she wasn't convinced it would be enough. Finally, Corbin let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Got it. We've stabilized the environment. For now, Miana allowed herself a moment of relief, though her expression remained guarded. Good work, Corbin, but we can't let our guard down. Not for a second, he nodded, his grin fading as he considered the challenges still before them. I know. But at least we've bought ourselves a little more time. The digital Earth continued to spin beneath them, a fragile construct that held the hopes and dreams of humanity in its pixelated grasp. Miana leaned against the console, exhaustion settling into her bones. You ever wonder how we ended up here, Corbin? Fighting aliens in a virtual world while the real one falls apart, Corbin chuckled, though there was little humor in the sound. All the time, Miana. But if there's one thing humans are good at, it's finding a way through the impossible. She nodded, her gaze fixed on the digital horizon. Let's just hope we can keep doing that for a little while longer. Corbin turned back to his console, his mind already working on contingency plans and countermeasures. It was a constant race against time, a battle for survival fought in the shadows of a world that no longer existed. But for now, they were still standing. And as long as they had each other, they'd keep fighting. The Viathans might have been advanced, powerful beyond measure, but they'd underestimated one crucial thing, the sheer stubbornness of humanity. And that, Corbin mused, might just be their secret weapon. As the lights in the command center finally stabilized, Miana straightened, a renewed sense of purpose in her stance. All right, team. Let's show those Viathans what humans are made of. And with that, they prepared for the next round, knowing that the fight was far from over. But as long as they had a chance, they'd fight with everything they had, because that's what humans did best. The command center smelled like a combination of burnt coffee and desperation, a sensory delight only outmatched by the sight of Corbin, hunched over his flickering console like a man trying to reason with a particularly stubborn toaster. Mina leaned against a wall, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold with the bemused detachment of someone who's seen the universe try and failed to implode several times already. "Any bright ideas, Corbin?" she quipped, looking around at the operators who typed furiously as if their keyboards might suddenly sprout legs and scamper away. "Or are we just going to rely on the power of positive thinking?" Corbin didn't look up, his fingers a blur over the holographic display. "I'm working on it, Mina. You know, some of us can't just stand around looking pretty." "That's why I'm here," she replied, deadpan, "to bring aesthetic balance to the apocalypse." He grunted in response, a sound that summed up their entire relationship, mutual annoyance and grudging respect. "There might be something," he said, finally looking up, eyes gleaming with the kind of manic excitement typically reserved for mad scientists and children left alone with a chemistry set. "Ancient digital artifacts, a little pre-collapse tech that might give us an edge against the Viathans." "Ancient tech? Like what? Digital abacuses and binary stone tablets?" Mina raised an eyebrow. "Something like that," Corbin nodded, his smile lopsided. "Old Earth stuff, unpredictable, unstable, but if we can get our hands on them, they can disrupt the Viathan tech in ways we can't even begin to comprehend." "Great," Mina sighed, "because what this situation needs is more unpredictability." Corbin smirked. "Oh, come on, where's your sense of adventure? Lost it around the time Earth started smelling like a forgotten toaster oven," she replied. "But tell me more about these artifacts. And please, use small words for my primitive brain." He tapped a few keys, and a map of a digital Earth appeared, dotted with locations ominously marked in red. "We need to send teams out to these sites. They are in the more unstable sectors of this virtual nightmare. The Viathans will no doubt try to stop us, but if we can retrieve them, it might just give us the upper hand." Mina stared at the map, her expression a mix of skepticism and reluctant curiosity. "And how exactly are we supposed to get these without getting virtually vaporized?" Corbin shrugged, the picture of nonchalance. "With a little luck, a lot of skill, and maybe some good old-fashioned human stubbornness. Well, good thing stubbornness is the one resource we've got in excess." She pushed off from the wall, rolling her shoulders. "Let's get a team together." The command center buzzed with renewed energy as Mina and Corbin briefed the chosen operatives. It was a motley crew, a mix of hackers, soldiers, and those who had survived this long through sheer force of will. Each one was armed with a blend of digital and human tenacity that no Viathan could replicate. "All right, listen up," Mina called, her voice cutting through the chatter like a rusty knife through soft butter. "We've got a mission. It's dangerous, probably suicidal, but hey, what else is new?" A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, though the underlying tension was palpable. "We're going after some old tech," she continued. "Stuff that might give us a fighting chance against our uninvited guests. And before you ask, no, I don't know why we didn't think of this sooner." A hand shot up from a young man with bright eyes and a nervous energy. "What's the worst that could happen?" he asked, like a man who hadn't been paying attention to the universe's current state of affairs. "Death, dismemberment, digital dementia," Corbin listed off casually. "But hey, you could also stub a toe or something." "Let's focus on the positives." With the teams assembled, they set out into the virtual world, a kaleidoscope of gray hues and glitchy landscapes, the digital echoes of a planet that once was. Mina led her group with the confidence of someone who had no idea where they were going but was too stubborn to admit it. "Keep your eyes peeled," she instructed. "The Viathans have a way of popping up when you least expect them. Like an X lurking on your social feed." Her team moved with caution, their avatars nimble and alert, weaving through digital streets that flickered like an old film reel. In the distance, the eerie glow of a Viathan patrol lit up the sky like malfunctioning Christmas lights. "All right," she murmured to Corbin over the comms, "we're approaching the site." "Any words of wisdom? Don't die," he replied, his tone light but the seriousness beneath it unmistakable. "And try not to touch anything that looks like it might bite. Gee, thanks. Real helpful. The site was a digital relic, a crumbling monument to humanity's past arrogance and ingenuity. Miana approached cautiously, her team fanning out to form a protective perimeter. The artifact itself was disappointingly small, a sphere of pulsating light nestled in a tangle of virtual roots. Looks like it's seen better days, one of her team muttered, eyeing it with suspicion. Join the club, Miana said, reaching for the sphere. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, the world lurched, a sickening jolt that sent her crashing to the virtual ground. Miana, Corbin's voice crackled in her ear, distorted by static. What's happening? She groaned, pushing herself upright as the digital landscape around her twisted and warped. Just a little turbulence, she grunted, shaking her head to clear the disorientation. I think I touched a nerve. The world settled, the artifact's light dimming to a dull glow. Miana picked it up gingerly, half expecting it to explode in her hands. I've got it, she announced, more to convince herself than anyone else. And the Viathans? Corbin asked, a note of urgency in his voice. Not yet, but I've got a feeling we're on borrowed time. She motioned for her team to fall back, their retreat marked by the distant hum of approaching Viathan vessels. They moved swiftly, the artifact clutched protectively in Miana's grip. It felt heavier than it should, a weight that pulled at her conscience as much as her arms. The Viathan patrols were closing in, their presence a dark shadow on the edge of her awareness. You know, she panted to Corbin as they ran, maybe next time we could try something less risky. Like playing chess with a cobra. Where's the fun in that? He replied, his voice a reassuring anchor amid the chaos. Besides, you're doing great, nearly there. Miana smirked, her breath coming in ragged gasps. I don't know if I'd call running for your digital life great, but I appreciate the vote of confidence. The command center loomed ahead, a beacon of stability in an unstable world. Her team spilled into the room, breathless and battered but victorious. Nice work, Corbin greeted them, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the artifact. Let's see what this baby can do. He set the sphere on the console, his fingers dancing over the keys with practiced ease. The artifact thrummed with energy, its light pulsing in time with the rhythm of Corbin's typing. A strange silence fell over the room as they watched, a collective holding of breath as they waited for something, anything, to happen. And then it did. The digital landscape rippled outward from the command center, a wave of disruption that swept across the virtual world, sending Viathan systems into disarray. Alarms blared and the operators scrambled to manage the chaos. The artifact's working, Corbin grinned triumphantly. It's disrupting their communications, buying us some time. Miana allowed herself a small smile, though the victory was tempered by the knowledge of what was still to come. Time's a luxury we can't afford to waste, she reminded him. What's next? We keep pushing, Corbin replied, his gaze hardening with determination. The Viathans aren't going to take this lying down. We need to find more artifacts, keep them on the back foot. And when they regroup, she asked, her tone grim. Then, Corbin said with a feral grin, we hit them where it hurts. We make sure they regret ever underestimating us. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity, the operators working with renewed vigor as they coordinated their next moves. Miana lingered by the console, watching Corbin work his magic with the artifact. You know, she said, her voice pitched low so only he could hear, if we pull this off, you might just go down in history as a genius. He chuckled, a dry, self-deprecating sound. Or a madman. The line's pretty thin these days. True, she agreed, her gaze sweeping the room. But it's the mad ones who change the world. As the digital earth spun beneath them, Miana couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, a stubborn ember that refused to be extinguished. The Viathans might have had the upper hand, but humanity had something far more dangerous. The willingness to fight, to adapt, to survive against all odds. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. All right, folks, she called to the room at large, her voice carrying the weight of the resolve she felt. Let's show those Viathans what a cornered human is capable of. Amidst the chaos, the uncertainty, and the looming threat of extinction, They rose to the challenge with a blend of courage and defiance that was uniquely and irreversibly human. The command center buzzed like a hive of caffeinated bees, and Miana felt the familiar itch of impending disaster crawling up her spine. The artifact had given them a temporary edge, but it was like putting a band-aid on a severed limb. Useful, but ultimately unsatisfying. "Attention, ladies, gents, and unspecified digital entities," Miana called out, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife through a soggy piece of toast. "We've poked the space bear, and now it's angry. Our Viethan friends are gearing up for a full-scale tantrum, and they're not the type to cry quietly in a corner." Corbin glanced up from the console, his eyes gleaming with a manic energy that was both reassuring and disconcerting. "Good news is, we've got a small window of opportunity. Bad news. It's about the size of a gnat's ass." Miana nodded, her mind already racing through strategies like a rat in a maze with a cheese fixation. "Okay, we need to pounce while they're scrambling. Suggestions." A grizzled veteran with a face like a weathered moon stepped forward, his avatar glitching slightly as if mirroring his real-world aches. "We hit him hard and fast. Make him think twice about picking on a species with nothing to lose. Or at least make him think once," chimed in the bright-eyed young man from earlier, likely regretting his career choices but too deep in the trench to turn back now. Corbin rubbed his temples, his fingers moving in frantic circles like tiny tornadoes. "We need to keep them off balance. More artifacts mean more disruption. We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting to remind them that humans are a stubborn lot of bastards." Spoken like a true motivational speaker, Miana quipped, cracking a grin that felt more like a grimace. "All right, we're going artifact hunting. Again. Let's make sure this isn't our last dance." The operators within the command center moved with a renewed sense of urgency, each keystroke a heartbeat in the collective pulse of human defiance. Miana watched them work, marveling at the tenacity that thrived in the face of annihilation. "Miana," Corbin said, his voice pitched low and serious, "we need to coordinate with the other factions. This can't just be our fight." She gave him a sidelong glance, one eyebrow raised in skepticism. "You really think the others will play nice? Last I checked, they were too busy fighting over who got the last can of beans." He shrugged, his smile wry. "Desperation makes strange bedfellows. Besides, it's either unite or become digital roadkill." Miana sighed, pacing back and forth like a caged tiger with a penchant for sarcasm. "Fine, let's play nice. But if I get stabbed in the back, I'm haunting you from the afterlife." "Deal," Corbin replied, tapping his console with all the grace of a concert pianist. "All right, let's get everyone on a line. Time for a little human camaraderie." The communication channel crackled to life, a discordant symphony of voices arguing, negotiating, and occasionally swearing like sailors after a long day at sea. Miana stepped forward, cutting through the noise with a voice honed by years of shouting over chaos. "Listen up, folks," she said, her tone commanding but tinged with the weariness of someone who'd seen one too many disasters. "I know we've all got our differences, but unless you all fancy becoming digital dust, it's time we work together." A skeptical voice piped up, laced with the smug superiority typical of someone who believed their IQ was directly correlated with their ego. "And why should we listen to you? Because I'm the only one here with a plan that doesn't end in a pile of ones and zeros that used to be your avatar," Miana shot back, her patience thinner than the ice on a summer pond. A grudging silence followed, the kind of quiet that happens when people realize they are out of other options. Miana pressed on, outlining their strategy with the fervor of a preacher trying to save a congregation that had rather sleep in. As she spoke, Corbin fed data into the holographic display, a swirling mass of information that looked like a Jackson Pollock painting, had a nasty run-in with a screensaver. "With any luck," he said, "and an unhealthy dose of human stubbornness, we might just make it through this." "Luck," Miana snorted. I'll settle for a miracle. The plan was simple in the way that only desperate plans can be. Hit multiple artifact sites simultaneously, keeping the Viathans so busy they wouldn't know whether to defecate or wind their watches, assuming they had either a digestive tract or a concept of timekeeping. With the factions reluctantly united, Miana and her ragtag band of misfits prepped for the mission. They were a colorful bunch, if your idea of color was a palette of grays and browns, with the occasional splash of paranoia. "All right, folks," Miana said, gathering her team. "Today's the day we show those Viathans that humanity doesn't roll over and die just because the odds are stacked against us. We've been the underdogs since day one, and we like it that way." "Rah, rah, go team," Corbin added dryly, adjusting his headset like a warrior donning a helmet. "Let's make sure this isn't our last stand." With those inspiring words, they plunged back into the virtual world, the landscape as familiar as it was disheartening. Miana led her group with the determination of someone who'd long since stopped caring about winning and was now just trying to make sure the other side didn't win either. The first sight loomed ahead, a dilapidated structure that had once been a symbol of human achievement, now reduced to a digital relic of lost dreams. Miana could almost taste the irony. "All right, fan out and secure the perimeter," she instructed. "And remember, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So don't touch anything shiny unless you want to find out what virtual electrocution feels like." The team spread out, their avatars slipping through the shadows with the grace of a herd of elephants on tiptoe. Miana approached the artifact, a glowing orb that pulsed with a light reminiscent of a neon sign advertising doom. "Looks like a bug zapper," someone commented, eyeing it warily. "Let's hope we're not the bugs," Miana muttered under her breath, reaching for the orb. The moment her fingers connected, the world around her shimmered like a mirage in the desert, briefly blurring the line between reality and the digital facade they inhabited. With a surge of energy, the artifact activated, sending waves of disruption crackling through the Viathan systems. Miana allowed herself a brief moment of triumph, a small spark in the encroaching darkness. "Corbin, it's working," she reported, her voice tinged with the thrill of the unexpected success. "Of course it is," Corbin replied from the command center, his voice a lifeline in the chaos. "We might actually pull this off." But just as hope dared to unfurl its wings, a warning flashed across the display. A Viathan assault, full-scale and merciless, bearing down on their position with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer through glass. "Incoming!" Miana shouted, rallying her team with the alacrity of someone who'd run out of patience long ago. "Fall back, we need to regroup." As they retreated, the digital landscape twisted and shimmered, a kaleidoscope of chaos as the Viathans closed in. Miana's heart pounded in time with her footsteps, her mind racing through contingency plans like a gambler on a losing streak. "Corbin," she panted, "we've stirred up a hornet's nest." "What's our next move?" "Hold on," he replied, his voice crackling with the interference of the deteriorating connection. "I'm working on a plan, if you can call it that." "Now's not the time for existential crises," Miana snapped, her patience as thin as a hologram on its last battery. All right, Corbin relented, a hint of a grin in his voice. "I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." "Does it involve running headlong into danger with no guarantee of survival?" "Pretty much." "Then it's no different than every other day," Miana muttered, steeling herself for the inevitable. "All right, we're listening." Corbin's plan was as reckless as it was daring, a coordinated strike on the Viathan Central Command, using the disruption from the artifacts as cover. It was a high-stakes gamble, the kind that either ended in victory or spectacular failure. There was no middle ground. Miana relayed the plan to the team, their reactions a mix of disbelief and grim acceptance. They were soldiers, hackers, survivors, people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. "All right, folks," she said, her voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions beneath the surface. "This is it. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we show them that humanity isn't going down without a fight." The response was a chorus of determination, each voice a testament to the resilience that was humanity's greatest strength. They charged forward, avatars cutting through the digital landscape with a purpose that transcended the virtual boundaries of their world. The Viathans were waiting, a formidable force that seemed to blot out the very fabric of the digital sky. Miana felt the familiar prickle of fear, a sharp reminder of her mortality in a world that had forgotten what it meant to be human. "Stay focused," she called out, the words a mantra she clung to like a lifeline. "This is our chance. Let's make it count." As they clashed with the Viathans, the virtual battlefield erupted in a chaotic dance of light and sound, a cacophony of destruction that resonated with the primal instincts buried deep within them all. Miana fought with a ferocity that surprised even her, a raw determination that fueled her every move. Around her, her team battled with equal fervor, each one a testament to the spirit that refused to be broken. In the thick of it, Corbin's voice crackled through the comms, a beacon of hope in the storm. "You're doing great. Just a little longer. We're almost through." Miana grinned, her expression fierce and unyielding. "Almost doesn't count for much, Corbin. But thanks for the vote of confidence." The battle raged on, a swirling vortex of chaos and destruction that threatened to consume them all. But amid the turmoil, amid the fear and uncertainty, one thing remained clear. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the right to exist, to defy the odds and carve out a future from the ruins of the past. And maybe, just maybe, that defiance would be enough to turn the tide. The Viathans' assault was like a toddler on a sugar high with a sledgehammer, relentless, noisy, and likely to leave a mess. Miana watched as avatars flickered and disappeared across the virtual battlefield, each vanishing figure a stark reminder of the digital mortality they all faced. Her team, once a ragtag bunch of misfits with nothing to lose, was rapidly becoming a group of digital ghosts. "Any bright ideas, Corbin?" she barked, ducking behind a digital barricade that offered about as much protection as a cardboard box in a rainstorm. "Working on it," Corbin replied, his voice strained as he juggled multiple holographic displays with the grace of a man trying to defuse a bomb while riding a unicycle. "Let's just say I'm currently engaged in a passionate affair with desperation." A Viathan energy blast zipped overhead, close enough to give Miana a virtual sunburn. She glanced around at her dwindling team. The grizzled veteran's avatar flickered, the glitching more pronounced with each passing second. "Hold it together, old man," she muttered, half to him, half to herself. "Digital arthritis," he grumbled, his voice as raspy as sandpaper on a chalkboard. "I'm holding as tight as I can, but the damn circuits don't bend like they used to." Miana sighed, her frustration mounting. "We've got more holes in this plan than Swiss cheese at a firing range. We need to regroup, rethink, or die trying." The bright-eyed young man finished, his enthusiasm now replaced by a steely resolve. "What's the backup plan, boss?" Miana flashed him a weary smile. "Who said anything about a backup? We're winging it." Like always, Corbin's voice crackled through the comms, his tone more manic than usual. "I've got it. A solution crazier than a three-headed monkey, but it just might work. Your vote of confidence is overwhelming," Miana replied dryly. "Let's hear it. Distract them with an overload of ancient digital artifacts. We hit them with everything we've got, scramble their senses like a breakfast special gone wrong. And how exactly do we get our hands on enough artifacts to pull this off?" Corbin paused, as if savoring the taste of his own madness. "That's the tricky part. We'll have to scavenge what we can from the remains of this virtual wasteland." Miana groaned. "Right. Because artifact hunting in an active war zone sounds like a leisurely Sunday stroll. Hey, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it." Corbin replied with a chuckle that danced on the line between humor and hysteria. "All right, I'll bite," Miana said, looking at her remaining team. "We split up, gather whatever artifacts we can, and meet back here. Just remember, if you find something shiny, it's probably going to blow up in your face." The group nodded, their avatars dispersing into the shadows like digital phantoms. Miana took a deep breath, the air thick with tension and the faint smell of burnt toast, a reminder of a world that no longer existed. As she moved through the digital ruins, she couldn't help but reflect on how ridiculous it all was. Fighting for survival in a virtual world while the real one lay in ruins. Humanity had always been great at finding new ways to screw things up. Found something. The bright-eyed young man's voice cut through her thoughts, tinged with the thrill of discovery. "What is it?" Miana asked, her interest piqued. "A shiny rock," he replied, sarcasm dripping from his words like oil from a broken engine. "With some runes or hieroglyphs. I think it's giving me the evil eye. Bring it back," Miana instructed, "and try not to sneeze on it." As she continued her search, the silence was broken by the occasional digital explosion and the persistent hum of Viethan machinery. Every step felt like walking on eggshells, each artifact a potential landmine. "Found another one," reported the veteran, his voice crackling like old radio static. "Looks like a digital Rubik's Cube. Just don't try to solve it," Miana quipped, "unless you want it to turn into a digital hand grenade." Back at the rendezvous point, Miana surveyed their haul. They had managed to scrape together a collection that resembled a digital yard sale. Arcane symbols, glowing orbs, and one particularly malevolent-looking chunk of code that gave off ominous vibes. "It's like a thrift shop for ancient tech," Corbin mused, eyeing the artifacts with a mix of awe and trepidation. "Let's hope the Viethans are allergic to nostalgia. Corbin, if these things don't work, I'm holding you personally responsible," Miana warned, though her tone was more playful than threatening. Julie noted, "If we survive, drinks are on me. I'll hold you to that." With the artifacts ready to deploy, Miana and her team steeled themselves for the chaos that was sure to follow. It was a desperate move, but desperate times called for even dumber measures. "Release the swarm," Miana commanded, feeling a surge of adrenaline course through her avatar. The artifacts activated in a burst of digital fireworks, disrupting the Viethan systems with the chaotic beauty of a car crash in slow motion. The alien assault faltered, momentarily confused by the barrage of ancient technology. "Now's our chance," Miana shouted, rallying her team with the fervor of a ringleader at a circus of chaos. "Push forward while they're still reeling." The battlefield erupted once more, a cacophony of virtual violence as they surged forward, each step a defiant gesture against the overwhelming odds. Miana fought with a determination that bordered on feral, every swing of her digital weapon fueled by the fiery spirit of human stubbornness. "Corbin, how's it looking on your end?" she yelled, her voice tinged with the thrill of the fight. "Like a squirt in a blender," Corbin replied, his words a testament to the chaos he was navigating. "But we're holding." For now, the battle raged on, each moment an eternity as they pushed deeper into Viethan territory. But just as hope began to glimmer, the inevitable happened. A Viethan counterattack, more ferocious than a rabid wolverine with a grudge. "We're losing ground," Miana called out, her command cutting through the tumult like a knife. "Fall back." "Regroup," her team responded with the precision of a well-oiled machine, retreating to a defensible position with the kind of synchronicity only desperation could achieve. As they regrouped, the realization hit Miana like a punch to the gut. The artifacts had bought them time, but not much else. They were running out of options faster than a gambler in Vegas. "What now, fearless leader?" the bright-eyed young man asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We adapt," Miana replied, her resolve hardening into steely determination. "We find whatever edge we can and we use it. No matter how small." Corbin's voice crackled through the comms, a lifeline in the madness. "I've got one more trick up my sleeve, but it's a long shot, longer than this." Miana gestured to the digital battlefield, a chaotic mess of flickering avatars and Viethan constructs. "Let's just say it's the equivalent of bringing a spork to a knife fight," Corbin admitted, a hint of a grin in his voice. "All right, spill it," Miana said, her curiosity piqued. "There's a backdoor in their system," Corbin explained, his words rushed, as if speaking too slowly might let the opportunity slip away. It's risky, but if we can get in, we can shut down their mainframe, at least temporarily. A high-tech Trojan horse, Miana asked, her interest piqued, more like a digital whoopee cushion. But it might just work. Miana considered the plan, weighing their dwindling options against the enormity of the task. It was insane, risky, and borderline suicidal. But then again, so was everything else they'd done. All right, we go for it, she decided, her mind made up. Let's give those alien bastards a taste of chaos. Her team gathered around, their camaraderie a stark contrast to the digital chaos surrounding them. They were tired, battered, but not yet broken, and that was what mattered most. All right, folks, Miana said, her voice infused with a steely resolve. This is it. We're going in, and if we're lucky, we might just live to regret it. The response was a chorus of half-hearted cheers and sarcastic remarks, each one a testament to the indomitable spirit that refused to be extinguished. On my mark, Miana commanded, her focus narrowing to the task at hand. Let's show these aliens what humanity's made of. With a final breath, they surged forward, avatars cutting through the digital landscape with reckless abandon. It was their darkest hour, where hope hung by a thread and survival was a distant dream. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, they fought on, driven by the stubbornness that defined them as human. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Miana felt like a cat with 9 lives down to its last 2, and she wasn't planning on letting the Viathans scalp them both today. All right, Corbin, hit me with it, she said, slapping her palms together with a mix of frustration and anticipation. What's this big magic trick you've got lined up? Corbin's avatar, a gaunt figure mimicking the man, was jittery on the holographic display, as if even the pixels themselves couldn't contain his manic energy. So, you know how the Viathans have that fancy digital skin? Well, turns out it's about as secure as a wet paper bag. I found a backdoor. Miana raised an eyebrow, half intrigued, half skeptical. A backdoor, huh? Kind of like leaving your front door open when you're running from the cops. Exactly like that, Corbin replied, with a sparkle of mischief in his voice. Except instead of a free ride to jail, it's a path straight into their system. You know what they say about free rides, Miana mused, trying to balance the cocktail of hope and dread swirling in her gut. They usually end up costing you an arm and a leg. The grizzled veteran chimed in, his voice a rusty hinge. If we're going into their system, we better pack more than just good intentions. We need a damn miracle. Standing off to the side, the bright-eyed young man, always too eager for his own good, piped up. So, what's the plan, boss? Sneak in, pull the plug, and hope they don't notice. Pretty much, Miana confirmed, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. But first, we need to get past the human barricade. Miana, you sly dog, Corbin murmured. You've been holding out on us. What is it? She sighed, patience worn thinner than a fiber-optic cable in a data storm. The other factions aren't exactly thrilled with the idea of waging all-out war from inside the belly of the beast. They'd rather sit around and wait for the Viathans to offer them tea and biscuits. The veteran snorted, a noise that could be mistaken for a malfunctioning tractor. Typical paper pushers. They'll be sipping their chamomile while we're served up like the main course. And that's why we need a bit of diplomacy, Miana said, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. Corbin's gaze was full of mischief and madness. Diplomacy, otherwise known as the art of telling someone to go to hell in such a way that they look forward to the trip. Exactly, Miana replied, her grin as sharp as a serrated blade. So let's convince them this suicide mission is their best bet. We need all the manpower we can muster. They gathered in the command center, the air thick with distrust and the faint odor of burnt hopes. Miana, standing at a makeshift podium, scanned the crowd of leaders. Each one represented a faction with an agenda as hidden as a stealth bomber in the night. All right, folks, Miana began, her voice cutting through the din like a hot knife through butter. We've got a potential way to turn the tide, but we need every one of you on board. A skeptical murmur rippled through the crowd, like a wave of invisible hands clapping mockingly. One of the leaders, a gaunt figure whose eyes seemed as deep as the void, spoke up. "And what exactly are you proposing?" "More reckless heroics," Miana barked a laugh. "Reckless, probably, heroic, that's debatable. We've got a backdoor into the Viathan system, courtesy of our resident mad scientist." Corbin waved from his corner, grinning like a kid who'd just found out how to download free candy. "But we need a unified front," Miana continued. "The Viathans won't wait around while we sort out our petty squabbles." Another leader, this one with a face as smooth and unreadable as an untouched screen, chimed in. "Why should we trust you? Or him, for that matter?" She nodded to Corbin, suspicion wrapped around her words like a noose. "Because," Miana said, savoring the pause like a fine wine, "we're your best shot at not ending up as digital dust. We've got the skills, we've got the nerve, and most importantly, we've got nothing to lose." A tense silence settled over the room, each second stretching like the last elastic band holding civilization together. Miana knew this was a gamble. But then again, when you're playing for the future of humanity, what's another roll of the dice? Finally, the leader with the void-like eyes nodded. "All right, Kepler, you've got our backing." For now. The other leaders followed suit, more out of desperation than genuine belief, a consensus born of necessity rather than trust. With a resigned nod, Miana concluded, "Good, because once we're in, there's no turning back. Either we pull this off or we're done." The meeting dispersed, leaving only her core team behind. She turned to them, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Well, I didn't think we'd get this far." Corbin shrugged, his avatar flickering like a light bulb on its last watts. "Desperation makes strange bedfellows." "Yeah, and I'd prefer not to sleep with a blaster under my pillow," the young man added, trying to lighten the mood with bravado. "Just remember," Miana said, her tone dropping like a lead balloon, "we're all in this together. That means if one of us screws up, we all go down." The veteran grinned, his teeth a crooked picket fence of experience. "Then let's make sure it's one hell of a screw-up." With the plan in motion, Miana gathered her team, the ragtag group of hopefuls and misfits ready to take on the Viathan menace. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing odds that would make a bookie cry. But they had one thing the Viathans didn't, a knack for improvisation and a stubborn streak wider than the Milky Way. As they suited up, the bright-eyed young man flashed a grin. "I'm ready to get my hands dirty." "More like a digital soap opera," Corbin joked, adjusting his holographic display. "With a lot more explosions." The veteran slapped the young man on the back, nearly knocking him off balance. "Just keep your head on straight, kid. You might just live long enough to retire." Together, they dove into the virtual battleground, the digital backdrop a chaotic symphony of code and conflict. Their avatars darted through the chaos, each movement a calculated risk in the high-stakes dance of survival. Corbin led the charge, guiding them towards the vulnerable entry point he'd discovered. "Follow my lead and try not to touch anything that glows. Trust me, it's not friendly." Miana stayed close, her senses tuned to the virtual landscape, the data streams flowing around them like rivers of light. "Corbin, you'd better be right about this." "Relax," he replied, as relaxed as a bomb diffuser with shaky hands. "If it goes wrong, blame the aliens." As they pushed deeper, resistance stiffened. Viathan constructs materialized like ghosts, spectral and menacing, their pixelated forms a testament to the aliens' digital mastery. Miana raised her weapon, a sleek digital rifle that felt like an extension of her will, and fired. The construct disintegrated in a shower of pixels. "Nice shot," the young man called out, his own weapon barking in digital defiance. "Thanks," Miana replied, a grim smile on her lips. "Let's see how many more we can send packing." With each step, the tension ratcheted higher, a palpable force pressing down on them. Miana's heart pounded in her chest, the beat echoing in her ears like a war drum. But fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Finally, they reached the back door, a shimmering portal of code nestled in the fabric of the virtual realm. It pulsed with a deadly beauty, a siren's call to those daring enough to enter. "Here we go," Corbin said, his voice a mix of excitement and dread. "This is where the fun begins." As they prepared to breach, Mina took a moment to address her team, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. "Remember, we're doing this not just for us but for everyone out there. Let's give them a fighting chance." The veteran, ever the pragmatist, nodded. "Or at least make sure they remember our names." With a shared nod, they plunged through the portal, their avatars swallowed by the vortex of digital code. Inside, the Viethan system was a labyrinth of alien logic, a sprawling city of data towers and encrypted pathways. Corbin moved with the grace of a master hacker, slipping through firewalls and bypassing security measures with a deftness that bordered on the magical. Mina followed, her eyes scanning for threats, ready to respond at a moment's notice. In the heart of the Viethan network, they found their target, the main control node, a towering monolith of alien technology. Its surface was alive with shifting patterns and runes, a testament to the Viethan's technological prowess. "All right, let's get this over with," Mina said, determination hardening her resolve. "Corbin, do your thing." Corbin's avatar knelt before the node, fingers dancing over the interface with the precision of a surgeon. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, initiating the digital whoopee cushion they hoped would topple the Viethan stronghold. The node shuddered, its surface rippling like a pond disturbed by a stone. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening roar, the entire system convulsed, alien constructs flickering and fading like ghosts at dawn. Mina felt a surge of triumph, a rare bloom in the garden of chaos. But the victory was short-lived. The Viethans, ever adaptable, began to regroup, their presence coalescing into a formidable counter-strike. "Time to go," Corbin shouted, the urgency of his words snapping Mina back to the present. They turned to flee, retracing their steps through the collapsing digital landscape, the Viethans closing in like predators on the hunt. As they ran, Mina's mind raced, calculating their chances, the odds tipping towards disaster with each passing second. But giving up was not an option. They burst through the portal, back into the relative safety of their virtual base. Mina took a moment to catch her breath, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins like a shot of espresso. "Did it work?" the young man asked, his voice tinged with hope and exhaustion. Corbin grinned, a wild, triumphant expression. "For now, we've bought ourselves some time, but they'll be back and they'll be pissed." "Let them come," Mina said, her voice a defiant challenge. "We'll be ready." As they regrouped and prepared for the next phase, Mina couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark in the vast, dark universe. They had poked the bear and the bear had roared, but they were still standing. And for now, that was enough. As they regrouped in their virtual hideout, Mina couldn't ignore the ominous sense of impending doom, like a hangover waiting to pounce. But they dealt the Viethans a decent smack upside their smug alien heads, and that was something to hang their hopes on, even if it was like hanging a coat on a wobbly nail. "Let's see him try and shake this one off," Corbin said, grinning like he'd just pulled off the prank of the century, his avatar flickering in and out like the universe's glitchiest ghost. The young man, still sporting that sparkly-eyed optimism that made him stand out like a glow stick at a funeral, nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, we showed them." "What's next?" "Next," Mina snorted, running a hand through her hair as if she could untangle the mess of thoughts the same way. "Now we brace for the unpleasant bit, the part where they hit back harder." A silence settled over them, punctuated only by the hum of their virtual environment, which now felt eerily like the calm before a storm. Or maybe just the universe pausing to catch its breath before another round of cosmic slapstick. The veteran, a man who'd seen enough action to know that hope was often just another word for not learning from your mistakes, leaned against a console, arms crossed. "So, what's the plan when they come knocking, and not exactly to borrow a cup of sugar? We exploit their weakness," Mina replied, eyes hard as she looked each team member in the face. "They think they are invincible because they built this whole digital skin facade. But I say we peel it back." Corbin clicked his tongue, tapping the side of his head like he was knocking on a door that might open to a brilliant idea. "Remember that ancient digital artifact we dug up, the one we used as a distraction during the first skirmish?" "Yeah," the young man said, eyes lighting up like a jackpot machine. "The Viathans didn't like that one bit, did they?" "Exactly," Corbin replied, his grin widening to Cheshire Cat levels. "If we can get more of those artifacts, we might just be able to tilt the scales again." "Right," Mina nodded, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety twisting in her gut. "And while they are busy dealing with our little surprise, we hit them where it hurts." "Your funeral," the veteran said, though there was a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "But hell, if I'm going down, I'd rather it be on the offensive." The plan was as risky as trying to unplug your toaster with a fork, but they had few other options. Desperation was the grand motivator here, a real kick in the pants when your back's against the wall and the wall's on fire. Corbin, now the de facto conductor of this digital symphony of chaos, began to orchestrate their next move, his hands flying over the holographic display. "I've located a potential stash of artifacts. Seems some old-world bunker got missed in the Viathan's initial sweep." Mjolnir raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, it's in the middle of nowhere and crawling with nastas." "You could say that," Corbin replied, bringing up a map that looked like a treasure hunter's fever dream. "But it's nothing we can't handle with a little bit of elbow grease and a lot of luck." "Ain't it always the way?" the veteran grumbled, though Mjolnir could see he was ready for action, the thrill of the fight rekindling that old fire in his eyes. The young man, still wet behind the ears but eager as a puppy, bounced on the balls of his feet. "Let's do this. I didn't sign up to sit around and wait for the end." With resolve forged in desperation, they geared up, donning their digital armor and weapons like knights of old, if those knights had traded horses for data streams and swords for virtual rifles. They stepped into the virtual battlefield once more, avatars glowing in the dim light of their base's monitors. "Remember," Mina said as they prepared to teleport to the artifact site, "stick together and don't do anything stupid. That's my job." The teleportation sequence was a dizzying rush of color and code, resolving into the grim landscape of the bunker site. It was a place that had seen better days, back when days were still a concept people understood, and now stood like a forgotten sentinel in the digital wilderness. Corbin led the way, his holographic display casting a faint glow as he scanned for threats. "Keep your eyes peeled. The Viathan's digital constructs aren't the friendliest neighbors." No sooner had the words left his mouth than a ripple of distortion spread through the ground, like a pebble dropped in a pond. The first of the Viathan constructs materialized, a hulking mass of code and menace. "Incoming," Mina shouted, raising her rifle and opening fire, the digital rounds tearing through the construct like confetti in a parade no one wanted to attend. The veteran and young man flanked her, their own weapons blazing. The battlefield was a cacophony of noise and light, each shot a bitter reminder that their very existence was on the line. Corbin worked feverishly, fingers dancing over his console as he disabled enemy defenses with the ease of a pianist tickling the ivories of a rather hostile piano. "I've got eyes on the artifacts, just a little further." The team pushed forward, trading shots with the Viathan constructs that rose to challenge them. Miana's pulse raced, the adrenaline a sharp, intoxicating spike in her system, keeping her sharp and focused. Finally, they reached the cluster of artifacts, ancient devices that glowed with a strange light, as if aware of the role they were about to play in the survival of humanity. "Grab 'em and let's boogie," the veteran barked, already securing one of the artifacts with practiced efficiency. The young man hesitated, reaching for an artifact. They're not gonna explode, are they?" "Only if you ask nicely," Corbin quipped, hoisting one himself. With their prize secured, the team made a strategic retreat, their path dogged by the relentless Viathan constructs. Miana's mind raced with potential scenarios, each one more dire than the last as they fought their way back to the teleportation point. Almost there, Corbin called, glancing back at the closing tide of enemies. Just a few more meters, but the Viathans were nothing if not persistent. They materialized closer, cutting off their escape with an urgency that could only be described as inconvenient. Miana gritted her teeth, refusing to let them be cornered. "We can't outrun them like this," she shouted over the din, her mind scrambling for a solution. "Then we make a stand," the veteran said, his voice a calm in the storm of chaos. The young man, for all his wide-eyed enthusiasm, stood firm, his weapon ready. Right here, right now. With no other choice, they formed a defensive circle, the artifacts at their center. The Viathan constructs surged, a relentless wave against their dwindling strength. But in their darkest moments, surrounded and outnumbered, humanity's stubborn streak shone through. Miana activated one of the artifacts, a desperate gambit. The device hummed to life, unleashing a pulse that rippled through the digital landscape. The effect was immediate and profound. The Viathan constructs shivered, their forms flickering as if caught in a glitch, and then they collapsed, dissolving into nothingness. For a moment, the silence was deafening, the battlefield a wasteland of digital debris. Miana let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, the relief like a cool breeze across a fevered brow. "Well, that worked better than expected," Corbin said, his grin all wild triumph and relief. The veteran chuckled, the sound more of a harsh bark. "Guess the universe's got a sense of humor after all." With the immediate threat neutralized, the team made their escape, teleporting back to the safety of their base. They arrived panting and weary, the adrenaline starting to ebb, leaving behind the familiar aches and pains of survival. Miana wiped sweat from her brow, feeling the weight of their victory settle on her shoulders. "We've bought some time," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos still ringing in her ears. "But not much," the young man pointed out, though his eyes sparkled with the thrill of their hard-fought success. "They're gonna come back and they're not gonna be happy." Corbin nodded, already back at his console, scanning for any signs of an impending Viathan counterattack. "We need to leverage this window of opportunity, strengthen our defenses, and prepare for whatever they throw at us next." "Right," Miana agreed, her resolve hardening. "And we need to rally the other factions, make them see that united, we've got a fighting chance." The veteran, ever the pragmatist, nodded. "A long shot, but the best shot we've got." As they settled in for the next round of planning, Miana couldn't help but feel a surge of cautious optimism. They'd faced the Viathans and lived to tell the tale, their unity and adaptability turning the tide against their alien adversaries. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was a start. And in this grim, digital war, that was more than they could have hoped for. Miana slumped into the well-worn chair at the command center, the digital readouts flickering like a tired old neon sign. She scanned the room, noting the quiet hum of anticipation that settled over her team like an unwelcome static charge. Victory was a strange beast, she thought, a two-faced bastard that grinned while whispering of the next storm. Corbin, looking more like a disheveled scarecrow than a mastermind, was already back to poking at the holographic display like it owed him money. "Well, that was fun," he said, not looking up. "Nothing like a near-death experience to get the blood pumping, eh?" "Yeah, as invigorating as a slap in the face with a wet fish," Miana replied, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "We bought ourselves a tiny, fragile window." "Now what?" The veteran, grizzled and more than a little cranky, leaned back in his chair, looking like he might just fall asleep right there. "We use the time to make some real trouble for those Viathan bastards. Can't have them thinking we're just a bunch of meat sacks flailing around in cyberspace." The young man, still buzzing like someone had wired him directly to a caffeine Roman 4, nodded vigorously. "We've shown them we can fight back. Now we need to show them we can think." "Thinking," Corbin muttered, scratching his chin, "is overrated, but sure, let's pretend we're capable of it for a moment." Miana snorted. "Pretend? You've been pulling that trick off for a while now." Corbin grinned, clicking his tongue. "Fake it till you make it, right? Speaking of which, we really need to get the other factions on board. They're not going to want to sit this out much longer." "Right," Miana agreed, her eyes narrowing as she considered the fractured alliances they had to mend. Time to play nice with the other kids in the sandbox, even if they'd rather bean us with their shovels than build castles together. The veteran scratched his head, giving a low whistle. Never thought I'd be here, hoping for diplomacy to work out. Hell of a day when shooting aliens seems simpler. The young man, eager as ever, piped up. So what's the plan then? Do we just, send them a digital fruit basket with a note that says, "Join us or die"? More like "Join us or die horribly," Corbin corrected, his eyes glinting with mischief. But yeah, something like that. Miana stood, determination etched across her face like a map to salvation. It's time to let them know we've got a chance here. We don't have to be pawns in the Viethan's game. We can flip the damn board. As if on cue, the command center's main display flashed with incoming messages, other factions, sniffing around like curious but cautious dogs at the edge of a bonfire. Miana opened a channel, her voice steady and strong. "This is Miana Kepler. You all saw what we did out there. The Viethans aren't invincible. We can beat them if we work together." A chorus of skeptical murmurs and the occasional sarcastic remark crackled through the channel. Typical, Miana thought. Trust was a scarce resource these days, rarer than honest politicians and good coffee. One particularly gruff voice cut through the noise. "Why should we believe you? What's to stop the Viethans from just swatting us like flies the moment we step out of line?" Miana leaned in, her expression hard as she replied, "Because the alternative is waiting for them to pick us off one by one. We don't have the luxury of sitting this out. It's all or nothing." Corbin, ever the showman, piped up with his own 2 cents. "And between you and me, nothing isn't as glamorous as it sounds. Pretty sure it involves a lot of screaming and shapes that don't fit into caskets nicely." The veteran added his own gruff endorsement. "We don't need a miracle, just a fighting chance. We've already proven we can give them hell for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." The young man's voice, unsteady but hopeful, rounded out the pitch. "Look, we've got artifacts, a plan, and the guts to see it through. All we need now is you." Silence followed, a heavy pause filled with the weight of doubt and deliberation. Miana held her breath, feeling the tension like a tightrope underfoot. And then, one by one, the factions began to respond. Not with the enthusiasm of converts, no, but with the steely resolve of those who'd been pushed to the brink. "All right, Kepler," came the gruff voice again, this time with a hint of reluctant respect. "You want to fight? You've got it." With tentative agreements trickling in, Miana allowed herself a small, weary smile. The real work was just beginning, but at least they weren't facing it alone. As the command center buzzed with new plans, strategies, and the occasional petty squabble, Miana stepped back, watching her team with something close to pride. They were a ragtag bunch, holding it together with duct tape and spit, but they were hers, and for now that was enough. Corbin sidled up to her, looking more rumpled than ever, but his eyes were sharp with purpose. "Not bad for day's work, huh?" Miana chuckled, though there was no small measure of exhaustion in it. "Yeah, just another day in paradise. But at least now paradise has a fighting chance." The veteran glanced over, a crooked smile on his lips. "Think we can actually pull this off, boss?" Miana thought about it, really let the idea roll around in her mind like a stubborn marble. "We're stubborn enough to try. And if the universe doesn't like it, it can go take a long walk off a short pier." Corbin laughed, a sound that was more like a bark than anything else. "Here's to pissing off the universe, one Viethan at a time." The young man, ever the optimist, raised an imaginary glass. "To humanity, may we be too irritating to ignore and too clever to conquer." Miana raised her hand in a mock toast, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. "To us, then. Let the Viethans come. We'll be ready." With renewed spirit, the team returned to their tasks, the buzz of strategy and preparation filling the air. Miana watched them, feeling the promise of a stronger, united humanity taking shape amidst the chaos. The future was uncertain, the path ahead fraught with danger and doubt. But they had each other, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like more than enough. As Miana turned back to the holographic display, her resolve was ironclad. They'd face whatever came with grit, wit, and a healthy dose of irreverence. In this grim digital war, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers. It was their unyielding will to fight back, to adapt, to survive. And in this they were unmatched. In the quiet moments that followed, as plans were laid and alliances forged, Mina allowed herself a rare moment of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And in this dark, unforgiving universe, that was everything.